The sea was calm that morning, as if it had no idea of the storm waiting to unfold upon its blue canvas. Captain Richard Phillips stood at the bridge of the Marsk, Alabama, scanning the horizon with steady eyes. To anyone watching, he looked like an ordinary man, worn from years of salt and wind, but to his crew, he was the anchor, the steady hand that never wavered no matter how rough the seas became. The sun gleamed off the metal of the ship, casting a golden path across the waves. It should have been just another day hauling cargo across dangerous waters. But fate had other plans. Phillips had spent his life on ships, guiding them through storms, through silence, and through the kind of loneliness only a sailor knows. He was not a man of many words, but he believed in his duty, in looking after his crew, in being the kind of captain who carried the weight of fear so his men didn't have to. That morning, however, his calm gaze caught something unusual. Two small blips on the radar moving faster than the surrounding fishing boats. His instincts, sharpened by decades, told him immediately, they were not fishermen. As the blips grew closer, the reality unfolded with terrifying clarity. Pirates. Somali pirates, desperate men who saw ships not as vessels of trade but as opportunities for ransom and survival. Phillips felt a chill rush through him, not for himself, but for the men working below who trusted him to keep them safe. He gripped the radio, his voice firm yet steady as he ordered his crew to lock down, to move into secure areas. They obeyed quickly, but the silence that followed was heavy. Everyone knew what was coming. The engines roared as the pirates closed in, their small skiff cutting through the waves with alarming speed. Armed with rifles and desperation, they shouted over the engines, their voices carried by the wind like a storm warning. Within moments, hooks clanged against the steel hull of the Marsk, Alabama. The sound was sharp, final, a sound Phillips knew he would never forget. The pirates had forced their way aboard. The crew's fear was palpable, though hidden behind closed doors and silent prayers. Phillips stood tall on the bridge, heart pounding yet face controlled. He thought of his family back home, of his wife's gentle voice reminding him to stay safe, of his children who believed their father could conquer anything. He would not let fear show, he could not afford to. As the pirates stormed the bridge, weapons raised and eyes hardened by hunger and survival, Phillips met them not with anger, but with a steady gaze. There was something in that moment, something unspoken between men from different worlds colliding on the same patch of sea. The leader of the pirates, a gaunt young man with fire in his eyes, shouted commands in broken English. His voice carried power, but also desperation. Phillips recognized it instantly. This wasn't just greed. This was survival. These young men were products of a world without choices, driven by famine, by conflict, by hopelessness. Yet in their eyes, he also saw fear, the same kind of fear his own crew felt. That realization stirred something deep inside him. Instead of shouting back or fighting, Phillips spoke calmly, carefully. His voice carried not just authority but humanity. "You don't have to hurt anyone," he said slowly, his words deliberate. "You've made it aboard. You've shown your strength. But we're men, just like you. Let's keep each other alive." The pirates didn't lower their weapons, but something in his tone made them hesitate. For a moment, the sea itself seemed to pause. That was the beginning, not of surrender, but of an unlikely connection born in the most dangerous of circumstances. Phillips knew this wasn't about winning or losing. It was about protecting his men, about keeping hope alive. And in that moment, though surrounded by guns and threats, he discovered that the true measure of courage wasn't in fighting back, it was in standing firm, in offering compassion when the world demanded fear. The day was far from over. The storm had only begun. But a seed had been planted, a seed of humanity in a place where none was supposed to exist. And as the pirates took control of the ship, Phillips silently promised himself that he would carry that seed through every moment, no matter how dark it became. The pirates spread through the ship like shadows, their bare feet padding across the steel deck, rifles gleaming in the sunlight. Fear traveled with them, echoing through the empty corridors, seeping into the hearts of the hidden crew. Some huddled together in sealed rooms, whispering prayers, gripping each other's hands like lifelines. Others tried to focus on breathing, reminding themselves that their captain had faced storms before. Somehow, he would face this one too. On the bridge, Phillips stood eye to eye with the pirate leader, a wiry young man who called himself Muse. His face was thin, skin stretched taut over cheekbones, eyes burning with both determination and exhaustion. He couldn't have been more than 24, yet life had already carved deep lines into him. His hands, though clutching a weapon, trembled slightly. Phillips noticed this. Every detail mattered when lives hung in the balance. "Captain," Muse said, his accent sharp, his words fractured. "We take ship. You, crew, safe if follow." His voice cracked like a whip, but underneath, there was a strain, a fragility that betrayed his youth. Phillips nodded calmly. "No one here wants trouble. Take what you need, but don't harm my men." For a moment, Muse's gaze flickered, perhaps surprised by the captain's composure. But then the other pirates barked in Somali, dragging their weapons across the consoles, their eyes wild with hunger and adrenaline. Phillips kept his body still, his mind racing. He had to think not as a sailor, but as a protector, as a father. Every move he made would ripple through the ship, through the fragile balance between desperation and violence. Hours passed like years. The pirates demanded money, but there was little to give. They demanded crew members, but most had vanished into hiding. Frustration burned in their faces. That was when Phillips made a decision that would test the limits of his own courage. He offered himself. "I'm the captain," he said firmly, his voice echoing through the tense silence. "Take me. Leave the others. You'll get nothing from them." The words shocked his crew, hidden yet listening. It was the act of a man willing to become the shield, willing to sacrifice so that others might see the light of another day. The pirates, startled by his boldness, exchanged rapid words in their native tongue. Muse's dark eyes fixed on Phillips. There was something in that gaze, not hatred, but a spark of recognition. Perhaps he saw in Phillips not just an enemy, but another human being carrying responsibility far heavier than the ship itself. "You brave," Muse muttered, almost reluctantly. "But brave men, still pay." With that, the pirates forced Phillips into a lifeboat, their guns pressing close, their voices rising in chaotic commands. The small orange capsule swayed violently as it lowered into the endless sea, carrying with it the weight of one man's selflessness. From the windows of the Alabama, the crew watched helplessly, their hearts breaking as their captain disappeared into the waves with the men who held his life in their hands. Inside the lifeboat, the air was thick with sweat and tension. The pirates argued among themselves, their voices sharp and desperate. Food and water were scarce. The ocean stretched infinitely around them, offering no escape, no comfort. Phillips sat silently, his hands bound, his mind working tirelessly. He thought of his wife Andrea, her letters folded neatly in his bag back in the captain's quarters. He thought of his children, waiting for their father to return. And he thought of the young men before him, not as monsters, but as lost souls who had been pushed into violence by a world that had abandoned them. At one point, Muse sat across from him, his rifle resting on his knees. The pirate's chest rose and fell with heavy breaths, his eyes dark with exhaustion. In the quiet, Phillips spoke softly. "You're young," he said. "Too young for this. Why are you here, risking your life for a few dollars?" Muse's lips tightened. At first, he said nothing. Then, almost reluctantly, the words spilled out. "No choice. In Somalia, no work, no food, no life. Only this. You have country. I have ocean. That is all." The raw honesty in his voice struck Phillips. He saw not a criminal, but a boy caught in the jaws of despair. For the first time, the two men, captain and pirate, shared something more than fear. They shared the knowledge of survival, of burden. Muse carried the weight of his starving family, Phillips carried the weight of his endangered crew. In that fragile lifeboat, the boundaries between captor and captive blurred, replaced by a shared, unspoken truth. Both were prisoners of circumstance. As night fell, the lifeboat rocked gently, the sea whispering beneath them. The pirates dozed in turns, rifles clutched tightly even in their sleep. Phillips sat awake, staring at the stars above. He remembered telling his son once that the stars were a sailor's compass, a reminder that no matter where you were never truly lost. That night, he whispered a silent prayer, not just for rescue, but for the young men around him, for the possibility that one day, they might know peace instead of desperation. The tension would rise again with the dawn. Negotiations loomed, dangers tightened, and fate balanced on the edge of a knife. Yet, in the stillness of the night, in the shared silence between a weary captain and a desperate pirate, humanity flickered like a fragile flame. And Phillips knew, if that flame could be kept alive, perhaps there was still hope, even in the darkest of seas.